Okay, so we are going to do the intuitive mountain painting. What I really like about this painting is we are not going to use a reference photo. It's just going to be a very organic process that just comes from within. And that's kind of a nice place to be. I was inspired by June Rollins. She does something similar. Being in Canada, I was never able to get the DVDs and learn the June Rollins technique. However, I was inspired, of course, by her paintings and kind of went out on my own. So I guess not being able to get the DVDs here in Canada was probably a good thing. So with that being said, let's get started. I'll show you my supplies. So this is what we're going to be painting with, a little bit with this guy here. It can be any size fan brush. It can be a nice one or a not so nice one. And I'm not particular about the brand at all, so just whatever you have for a fan brush and a coffee stir stick. So that's our tools, and what we're going to be painting on is Yupo, and the Yupo is on a cradle board, and it's been taped on with painter's tape. And as you can see, I've not cut the Yupo very nicely because I don't really need to. This is 6 by 8 on here, and my painting is going to be a 5 by 7. So I have about a ½ inch of leeway. So here's my 5 by 7 matting. You can see that there's a lot of play in here. So we're not going to worry too much about the edges, and that's a good thing because, of course, with fluid painting, you can have issues with your corners and edges. So this way we don't have to worry about any of that. And so that's our substrate, the Yupo on the cradle board with painter's tape. Then we have a little bit of alcohol, which is green because I was painting before, and that's okay. We have some blending solution by Tim Holtz. I really like this blending solution. It moves across the substrate at the speed that I personally like. The Claro extender is also wonderful. It's a little bit thicker and it moves a little bit slower. So also good to use, but good to know that there's that difference between them. And so today I'm going to be using this. Also, we are going to be using the 3-pack that Tim Holtz released. I'm sure it was probably one of his first 3-packs. I wouldn't doubt it because it is more or less the colors, the primary colors. So we have the Butterscotch by Tim Holtz, the Wild Plum, and the Stream. And so you can get these in a 3-pack at Michael's or online or many other places. Being in Canada, we go with Shades of Clay sometimes, or whatever's available to you. But this 3-pack is really good. Being primary colors, a lot more difficult to make mud. So I think for the beginners, this is really cool because if you haven't bought a lot of colors, you should have some of the primary colors. If you don't have Stream, you can use Mermaid. You know, there's a latte or there's a butterscotch caramel. Those can all work. The latte is a little bit brown for this. Wild plum or raspberry works as well. So there you go. You have some options, but this is the 3-pack I'm going to use. And then finally, we're going to use Tim Holtz, the Pinata Blanco Blanco and the Pinata Rich Gold. The Rich Gold needs to be shook. I have the lid off, so I'm going to shake it obviously with my finger over top at the top. But I have all the lids off so that I can have them at the ready when I need them. If you want to make a sun at the end, you're going to need the Tim Holtz mixative. So this is the Pinata mixative, really good for doing chunky mountains and fun little things like that. This is really good for doing a sun. It's a little thicker. You can also use it for the mountains, but it does something a little different. It doesn't really chunk up. It kind of it almost colors the color that you have. So if you have blue, then it'll be like a golden blue. So still a really cool technique, but we're just going to use this for the sun at the end, or the moon, whichever you are painting, if you decide to do that. So you don't even need this one. This is kind of like, don't go out and buy it. Watch the video, see if you want to do the sun before you go out and buy that one. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to wash our substrate. And this one has a little bit of staining on it. So I think based on the staining, I'm actually going to give it a flip, because it looks like, oh, that did come off. Oh, well, there you go. Who knew? Okay, so we want to make sure all of the alcohol is off of our painting and that we don't see any debris. So I like to kind of tip it and take a peek and see if I can see some debris. Looks pretty good. Who knows, it can still have some debris on it, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So what we're gonna do is start with the blending solution, and we're gonna go 3/4 of the way down, and we're just gonna give it a really good, I call it glistening whenever I'm doing this. I might add like 1 drop of caramel in here so you can see the blending solution a little bit better, so you understand what we're working with. So it's not gonna affect my sky color at all. And you can see that there's quite a bit coming off the sides here. As I'm talking, it can even get a little thinner. You can use your finger to make sure it goes all across the substrate. As I'm talking, of course, it dries fairly quickly, so I can add a little bit more in there. And then I'm gonna take my colors. So I'm gonna take a blue, which is the stream, go in that corner. And then the plum, wild plum, and the butterscotch on the bottom. And then I'm going to take some Blanco Blanco, and I'm gonna go in between this blue, because this blue is like super blue and really thick. So with that being said, I can take this and tip it this way, and then maybe go up across this way. And you can see those legs happening. We want to make sure that we bring them up and down. We don't want them to be too leggy. So if you see any strings coming out, just kind of manipulate them up and down. And it's gonna barely make it to the edge, but that's okay. Sometimes you want to cheer it on because you're not sure if it's gonna make it to the final edge here. But this one's going to, so I'm gonna let it do its magic. Looks like I have a piece of debris in the sky there. Not really happy about that, but we can worry about that later. We can either put a mountain there, a sun, maybe a bird, who knows. So you can see I don't have a lot of extra here, but I will take a napkin and just give it a little bit of a wipe. The secret to not having this crawl up on you is you want to make sure that it's dry. So this is tipped over to the side. If you make sure that it's fairly dry by the time you lay it flat, you're not gonna have that crawl up. And you can sometimes, if you put this on when it's wet and I was to flatten this guy can crawl back halfway and create a line of demarcation. And we don't really want that. So just give it one more swipe. That's looking pretty dry here. Come on, tap, tap, tap. We all know that when we're doing our skies. So I'm gonna leave that like that. Should be fairly dry by now. And that's looking really nice. Okay. So remember, we have a 1/2 inch leeway. So this at the top I'm not loving, and that's okay. Because we do have where we're gonna cut off some of that sky. So that's not a bad little sky. You know, sometimes they turn out better, sometimes they turn out worse. It's whatever it happens to be. You can do this exact same thing that I did and you're gonna come up with something completely different. So it's a good thing. That's what we love about fluid art. that it has a lot of unpredictability. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a strip of stream. So my stream isn't coming out. Woo! Good thing I pushed it off to the side. Okay, so I'm gonna put that stream in. Maybe a little bit of the pink, which is the wild plum in layman's terms. And then we want to make sure this is going to be much lower than our mountains. And then gold. Who doesn't love gold? So I'm going to make sure. I'm going to probably do one, maybe I'll do a second swipe in there. And then this is what our foundation for our mountain's going to be. So we're going to put our finger about here, and we're just going to make it a really soft movement. And this is almost like, you know, I hope that people aren't like using Ouija boards out there. I remember when I was a kid, we did it once. But anyways, you know how you kind of leave it and you let it kind of do its own thing? This is the same idea. So we're just taking those colors from the bottom. I have so much product on the bottom, and that's what I want. I want lots of product. I'm not really loving that caramel line, so I'm gonna go over it with the color. And I love that because I put the other color in there, it's stealing that caramel off of there and creating like kind of almost a third color. I kind of like that pink, but I guess that's out the window now. So we are just gonna go over here and do a little bit more. And here's our first swipe of the mountains. And this time I'm gonna go in with some white and some more gold because I love the gold. It's so nice. And maybe a little bit of the pink because it got a little bit lost. So I'm liking that wild plum. And maybe over here I just kind of bring it up like that and kind of pull it. And then maybe I just go up here like this. Going and leaving some of the background and putting some new stuff in the front creates kind of a perspective of, you know, the darker mountains that don't have the white in it. They're going to be in the far background. And then these pinky guys are going to be kind of in the closer range. So we'll just leave it like this. Okay. So I can just pull up this and all that product. We use so much product in this, and that's okay. And if I want, I can even go in there again, blending solution way down low because the blending solution crawls really high up. So we want to manipulate that blending solution in. We don't want to have it anywhere near grabbing the color. So this time I just use straight blending solution for my last little bit of hills at the front. And maybe sometimes you can even go up and steal some in there, right? So this is just going to soften up those lines for the final pass because the hills are a little bit closer to you when you're looking at it. So we're just taking out some of that. And that's looking good. Okay, so you can see that those mountains in the background look the farthest away, and that was kind of our first pass of the mountains. So after this, I'm just gonna take my finger, and this time I'm gonna be pretty firm. I'm just gonna go across, okay? So that's gonna create that line where we want our water to go. So after that, we are gonna take our fan brush and we're gonna just put on some caramel onto the fan brush. Be careful if you're doing it over your painting that it doesn't splash up. I'm just dotting this on so it's like, but it's quite saturated on there. So I'm making sure that the brush is saturated. And I'm just gonna do a little kind of tree line. And of course, there's still some blending solution from my last pass. So it's just gonna make some organic looking tree lump kind of things. I can do some over here or even make it a little higher up to take out that. Looks like there's one. Okay, that thing's bugging me. Okay, not a big deal. it's all about intuition, relaxing. You can't let that stuff bother you, right? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna do a little line across. And that's gonna be like kind of like a little beachy type idea, or just a flat ground before we hit the water. So you can see that we have some green in there, and that looks nice. And you could go all the way down to the bottom with green if you're not a water fan. I actually did have someone in my course that wasn't really much of a water fan. They just wanted to do prairies in the front. So if you want to make these trees more defined, you can go in one more time with your brush after that blending solution has kind of settled down. And once again, just okay. So then we're gonna do our water. So we're going to take stream, we're gonna go lower than the water once again. It's all about that blooming. It blooms so high up that we wanna make sure that we're kind of one step ahead of that. We don't want it to start crawling into everything that we're doing. So we wanna start low. And we have that green in there, which is cool because it's gonna create kind of a turquoise color. And maybe just go across it like this so I don't wreck my beach. And then I'll just go in here. Okay, this guy's kind of driving me a little bit nuts. This fan brush is a little too far out. But I can go this way, I guess. There's always a fix, but I will grab my other fan brush, which isn't quite so wonky. So here we go. Here's a new fan brush, and I'm gonna have to go over here again. So let me just take the white and a little bit more blue. That blue is very strong, so just be careful with it. And because I already have a lot of product, I can even throw in a bit of blending solution. Just make sure to go low with that because it does travel high. Okay, so this is looking better. And I can just go across. And create that water, that smooth water. What's pleasing to the eye is when you have some different textures. So we have the smooth of the sky, we have the rocky of this, we have kind of the brushy look of the trees, and now we have the smooth water. So it's really nice that our eyes can look at all these different textures. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna do the grass at the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is at the very, very bottom where it's hitting the actual tape, I'm gonna throw in some butterscotch. Then some rich gold. Just a little bit, just because why not have some gold in your grass too? I mean, it's a goldy painting, so why not? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by not making the grass very high up because it's quite moist. That stuff's gonna go out the side. Okay, so now I can go up and create some more grass. And as this dries, it creates more wispy grass. And you can go a little higher. You can even throw in a bit of white in here if you want it to have the grass to be a little bit more thicker, and maybe a lighter green in there. That might be a little light. I think I like the caramel better. So let's go back in with the caramel. And maybe even a bit of gold because that got kind of lost. There, that's a nice color. Kind of golden grass, why not, hey? And you can kind of leave some of that other grass kind of like a little bit of a hint of that grass. And over here, my grass didn't get defined, so I have to go up. And it's okay if it goes into the water quite a bit, because otherwise, with this 5x7 matting that I have, I'm gonna lose all my grass. that looks fun. Looks like it has a little bit of dimension to it with the layers of the grass that we did. So that in itself looks pretty good. In this painting, I can do a sun or a moon. It looks like the sun has already set, but of course everybody knows with a full moon, it can come out before the sun has almost set. Like the moon comes out once it goes behind the mountains. So we're gonna see that moon right away. So I'm gonna show you how to do a sun or a moon. We're gonna use, once again, the Tim Holtz Mixative. Do not X over the pinata for this because it's not going to make a good sun. We want to use the Tim Holtz Mixative. This is the one that's going to create that really defined sun that we want. So once I shake it, it can create a little bit of suction on the top, so you can see it like bubbled out there a little bit, and I want to wipe that off. So every time I shake it, there's like sometimes a little bubble that comes out. So after a shake, and then you can even see the bubble happen before I even squeezed it. So I'm gonna pull it out again. And I'm putting my sun here, or my moon here, because there's a little bit of a issue there. There was something in my sky. So that's where I decided to put the moon, where I had my flaw. So if you have a flaw in your sky, that's always a good place. And that is pretty much how you do your intuitive mountainscape. When we put on our 5x7 matting, we can see that we'll probably want it about there, depending. I really like that mountain, so maybe the moon is going to be in the corner, and I'm going to put it right about there. I don't really like that top part of the sky anyway, so let's take that out, and we'll just put it here, right in the corner. So that's about where I would put it, and that is how you do an intuitive mountain painting. I hope you enjoyed.